Hi guys, am I audible to everyone? Just type in yes if I'm audible. Okay, cool. So first of all, let us talk about, the very purpose of this webinar is to discuss how to get ready for top tech company interviews, and apart from that also stuffs like that what does it take to go there. I believe that okay, so yeah, so I was saying that the main purpose is to, for us to understand that what does it take to prepare for top tech companies interviews, like interviews of Amazon or Google or Microsoft. And we'll also be discussing the right strategy, that if you have to plan your own roadmap, how can you actually go about it. Okay, and see, you will learn most out of this session if we keep it very interactive. So I would request you to ask questions wherever you want to ask, and I would be happy to answer all of those. Okay, does that work for everyone? Keeping it interactive and then just posting your ideas on the chat so that I can just see over here and then I can. Cool, great. So yeah, so firstly let me just introduce myself also. So I'm Vivek, and yeah, so I'm Vivek, and I graduated from IIT BHU in 2016. So I did my bachelor's in computer science, and immediately after that I joined Amazon, where I worked for around 2.5 years. And yeah, and after that I co-founded this programming Pathshala. Okay, so this is all about me, and right since then I have been into training people, helping them how to crack top tech companies, and they have been successful enough in doing that. Okay, so let us start our discussion with a simple question from my side, that what do you believe, or what have you heard about top tech companies? What do they ask in their interviews? What are their expectations? I want the answers to be coming from your sides. Okay, so I can see one of you wrote DS algo, data structures algo again. So data structures algorithms and problem solving skills, logical approach, yeah, all of that are right. Operating systems, okay. Anything else? Okay, great. So basically, let me tell you about how does maybe the interview of Amazon looks like, okay? Because I have seen the rounds that have happened over there, so I can give you some ideas. So how it goes is that you have round one, okay? And this round one they call as PS plus coding, where this PS stands for problem solving. Okay, so this PS basically stands for problem solving. Now what exactly is problem solving? So can somebody talk a bit about that? What do I mean by problem solving? Which kinds of questions might be getting asked in this round? So what basically happens in this round is that the interviewer will ask you a question which will not require you to use a lot of knowledge of data structures and algorithm. Okay, so I was saying that when it comes to interviews of companies like Amazon, you will have first round of problem solving, and that will also involve some coding. Okay, now when I say problem solving basically means that you will be asked some question, okay, wherein you will not be expected to know a lot of data structures and algorithms. Okay, you will just be expected to know one programming language, so you should have a firm grasp on one programming language, and then you should be able to code that out. Okay, that is how the first round looks. Second round, so in the second round is called as DS Algo 1. So that is also the your first round of data structures and algorithms, where they ask you some simple questions based on DS Algo, and that are not that tough. So they don't ask you some advanced data structures or algorithms. Rather, they ask you simple problems, like they can take a problem on trees, or they might ask you something based on stacks and queues, things like those. Okay. The next round, which is your third round, that is more or less called as DS Algo 3. So that is the DS Algo 2 actually. So that is the round wherein they can ask you some complex problems. Okay. So they will expect you to, kind of build your logic to solve some really complex problems. Those problems could be problems how it looks on CodeChef or Codeforces, but not that tough again. I mean, the questions will never be too mathematical. You will just be required to have knowledge of data structures and algorithms to implement that out, and some tougher problems based on those. So an example could be that if somebody is asking you problems based on trees, as all of you might be familiar with the tree traversals already, someone can ask you that, hey, 2 of the traversals are given, now you generate me the third traversal, something like that. Okay. So this is how your third round would look like. And then you have a final round, which is also called as HR round or bar raiser round. That is more or less something behavioral. Okay. So in that round, you are asked some behavioral questions. Okay, and that is also a bit generic round. So there you might be evaluated based upon your knowledge of computer science fundamentals. So it could be operating systems, it could be database management systems, it could be something about object-oriented programming skills, and it could also be something about high-level design. Okay, when I say high-level design, generally it is not asked from freshers. Okay, because because high-level design is something which you learn as you grow. Okay, when you implement certain projects, when you build certain systems, then you learn how to build a system from scratch. Okay, but if you are an experienced guy, if you have let's say experience of 2 to 4 years or 5 or more than 5 years, then you can expect some tricky system design questions to be asked. Those questions could be that, hey, you build your own Make My Trip, or you build your own Facebook. Okay, and they have got different kind of nuances associated with them. Okay, so this is how the rounds look like. Now, one thing which is very important, which all of you should understand after hearing this, that is in none of these rounds you have been asked any question regarding some tool or some particular technology. Did you all see that? And do you all understand what I mean by that? Like, nobody asks you internals of .NET, or nobody asks you that hey, you must be aware of one particular framework for web development like Django or something like that. Okay. So this is a very important thing to understand, that you should be a good problem solver. Your DS Algo should be good, and apart from DS Algo, your computer science fundamentals should be great. Okay, and by computer science fundamentals, I simply mean DBMS, operating systems, and computer networks. This is how it goes. Okay, so the tech interviews are basically like that. Apart from that, when you have some fintech based companies like Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley, when they take your interviews, in their interviews they might ask you some mathematical questions, some puzzles, just to check how sound you are with mathematics. Okay, cool. So this is how the interviews generally goes. Okay, so now let us talk about that. If let's say you have to, since all of us agree that DS Algo is going to be a really essential component. Okay, so can somebody speak a bit about that? If I have to, let's say, prepare for DS Algo, what are the basic prerequisites for it? What things should you know from before so that you can bang on prepare for DS Algo quickly? Some of you have done it already and are on the track of learning DS Algo. Yeah, so that's true. So first thing is that you should have, as I said, a firm grasp on one particular language. So what I have seen is that there have been many people who, try to master a lot of language at the same time, and that does not make sense. Okay, you should know one language only, but that should be known to you in detail. That could be as simple as C language, which is taught in most of the universities and colleges. Okay, so you should have firm grasp on one language. Apart from that, you should be good at some basic maths. Okay, now what do I mean by basic maths? Okay, so what are the important topics of basic maths that one must know? So you must know something like number theory. Okay, now by number theory, what is it that I mean? Which kind of things should be known to you? You should know how to check whether a number is prime, how to perform prime factorization of a given number, and apart from that, you should know what a GCD is, what is LCM. These kinds of things should be very, very comfortable at. Okay, so this is one important thing. Apart from that, you should also be good at combinatorics. So, and this combinatorics is not advanced combinatorics. Rather, you should be very, comfortable with the kind of permutation and combination that is taught to you in your high school maths. Okay, because that is all you need for, programming the questions that are asked in interviews. Okay, it's good if we focus on the basics in these 15 days. Yeah, definitely. That is an essential component, and that we always do, because until unless you are clear with these, I have seen people who are not so sound with these, and then when they advance to, topics like dynamic programming and graphs, then they have a hard time over there, because these essential things they never worked upon, and they immediately jumped upon DS algo. Okay, so, and let me tell you one more thing. It is not required that you should be a maths genie to learn these things. Okay, these are very, very preliminary mathematical knowledge. So if you are just good with these, you can definitely go ahead and study DS algo and apply all of them. Okay, cool. So how's our program in these 15 days? We'll share with you that will be shared, like if a 15 days program is rolled out, then what will be the contents of it and how many hours it will be taught and everything that will be rolled out to you. Okay, cool. Yeah, so these are the things that you should be good at, and then you can move on to DS algo. Now, when it comes to DS algo, there are two components of it. There is a basic phase of learning and there is an advanced phase of learning. Okay, so you might remember some basic data structures that you might have worked upon already. So what kind of data structures have you already worked upon? Yeah, stacks and queues. So, I will kind of categorize them. So you have got certain linear data structures, and then you have got certain circular data structures. Then you have got hierarchical data structures. So by linear data structure, I mean that the simplest example could be an array. Okay, that an array is linear. You put your numbers over there. They are stored sequentially in contiguous memory location. This is how it goes. Okay, and similar is the case with stacks. Similar is the case with a vector, if you have heard of it. So currently, I cannot go into greater details of all of these, but I can talk about them on a very higher level. Okay, cool. So yeah, circular data structure, again, you might have heard of something like circular queues or circular linked list, how they operate and why they are required. So those are also the things that one must know. And then you have got something like hierarchical data structure. So why is hierarchy important? Can somebody tell me a real world example where hierarchy is required? Where do you see that some things are stored in a hierarchical way? Correct. Folder structure or a family tree or something like that. So if you look at your computer, how your file system is organized, there is a hierarchy, right? There is a well-defined hierarchy that within a folder there are other subfolders. Within those subfolders there can be some files, and again there can be some folders. So that is the need. That is the need of the world, and because of that you have got certain hierarchical data structures, like you have got trees. Okay, so trees is one very popular hierarchical data structure. Apart from that, you also have something called as heaps. You also have something called as tries. So these are some of the important hierarchical data structures that are out there. You also have another kind of data structure, which is graphs. Okay, and you might have already seen that graphs is one such data structure which is used a lot. Like if you take a look at Facebook builds a graph of people who are connected to each other if they are each other's friends. And same is the case with Google Maps. Okay, that it also models different places as, you know, as the nodes, and the roads between them are modeled as edges. And you know, what is your favorite data structure and why? So basically I would say that it again differs from people to people, but when you talk about you will not be able to make a data structure as your favorite. Rather than that, you can make certain categories of problems as your favorite. Okay, so I will be talking about some algorithms, and that will give you a glimpse of that why they are very, very useful. By the way, I would say that when it comes to data structures like trees, heaps and graphs are immensely important, because if there is a problem that requires you to use those, you cannot refrain from using those. You have to use those. Okay, cool. So these are the important data structures. So this is one classification that I spoke about. Apart from that, there is another classification also of data structure. So you have something called as static data structures, and you have dynamic data structures. Can somebody tell me what do I mean by this? What do I mean by static data structures and what do I mean by dynamic data structures? Static array, yeah, great. So let's say if you define an array, what happens? You fix the size of that array, right? Let's say you define int array of size 100. So you cannot insert more than 100 elements inside this. You cannot insert more than 100 integers inside this, right? But what happens when somebody tells you that, hey, I want you to store some integers, but I do not know how many integers are going to come from input side. Okay, in that case, you would want a data structure which has a initial size, that is initial capacity. Now as and when more numbers are coming, its size is growing. Okay, so you have got something called as array list, or you have got something called as vector. So these are certain dynamic data structures. You also have linked list, where the size grows over the runtime. So depending upon the different use cases, you have to use different kinds of data structures. Okay, cool. See, this was the data structure part. Okay, now apart from these, you should also be good at the important algorithms. Okay, so yeah, what are the algorithms that you already know about and you have done some questions on them and you are comfortable with those? Can you name me certain algorithms that are used a lot in computer science? DFS, BFS, sorting, cadence, okay, many of them, right? So I would say to start with, the most important one is searching, and then you have sorting. These two are the most important algorithms out there, because it is generally said that if you are good with just these two, and by good I mean really good with these two, then you can solve, you know, more than 60% of the problems, which do not require you to use some other fancy algorithms out there. Okay, so any problem of computer science, like if you take a deep look at it, is basically a combination of searching and sorting only. Okay, static data structure, yeah, I think you're answering that question. Okay, cool. So now these are the important algorithms which are covered first, and apart from that, you have got something called as greedy algorithms. Okay, you have also got something called as divide and conquer. So this divide and conquer kind of algorithm emerges from the concept of recursion. Okay, so have you all studied about recursion a bit? What is it and how it functions, how it works? So this is an important paradigm of algorithm, okay, which relies on recursion. Okay, cool. Apart from this, you are also required to know DP, which is dynamic programming, and then some important graph algorithms. It could be some shortest path algorithms and things like those, okay, which are very, very essential. So guys, you know, briefly I have spoken about the topics which are quite frequently asked in interviews. That is, if you want to set a learning track for you in data structures, you should know these. Okay, I did not name everything in linear because I did not write, sorry, I named them though, that in linear you have arrays, you have vectors, you have linked lists, you have queues, you have stacks, and in circular you have circular form of queues, you have circular form of linked list and things like those. Okay, so, and graphs you anyways know. So these are the important things that one must know. See, there are many advanced data structures like binary index trees, like segment trees and Fenwick trees and many others out there. But in interviews, those are not frequently asked, or I would say that the chances are very less that they would be asked from you. Okay? Yeah. So, but still, why does an interview appear to be, complex enough? Why? The reason behind that is the questions that are asked are of higher difficulty level or more complex from the same topics itself. Okay, so they'll keep the topic same and maybe they'll ask you a question where binary search might be getting used, but at the first glance you cannot detect whether binary search can be used or something else can be used. Okay, so how to prepare with 4 months? Okay, so good question. So like what I would say over here is that when you are preparing a learning track for you, the first thing, if you are not already well versed with a programming language, pick one programming language of your choice and learn it. And when you learn it, I would basically say that first of all, learn the basic language specific constructs, like what are the primitive data types over there, how does looping work, how does decision making if else conditions work. Learn about pointers for sure, learn about structures for sure. If you are learning Java or C++, learn about classes and objects, how they are created and things like those. So this should, if you really do it rigorously, it won't take you more than 2 to 3 weeks, considering that you already have some preliminary knowledge of programming. Okay, does getting good at programming language include OOP? No, not necessarily. OOPS is a very broad thing and it contains many higher level things also, like polymorphism, encapsulation and things like those. You do not need to be good at that to learn DS algo. Okay, so I would really not say that you should wait for yourself to become great at OOPS before you start learning these things. Okay, recursion, okay, we'll just talk about those things gradually and maybe in some classes that we would have. Yeah, so you can take 2 to 3 weeks to make yourself great at this, and revision of this would just be 3 to 4 days of work and not more than that. Okay, within 3 to 4 days you can make yourself good at basic maths, and then you can advance ahead. Okay, from here now you can come to data structures part. Okay, in data structures you can start with these basic data structures, and let me tell you that if you have to prepare all of them, by that I mean if you have to do all the classical problems based out of them, it would take you somewhere around 2 months. Okay, considering the fact that you are able to dedicate at least 4 to 5 hours each day, which you must. Okay, because see, just learning the primitive operations of data structure is not going to be enough. If you just learn how to insert in a binary tree, okay, how to create a binary tree, how to traverse a binary tree, that is not going to be useful. You should be good at solving any new question given on top of it. Okay, so and if that being said, you should at least be you should at least have solved at least 25 to 30 questions, that is at least questions based on each of these data structures. Okay, so that would take you around 2 to 2.5 months based on your dedication. Okay, from there now you can switch to algorithms. Now when you come to algorithms, this is something which might take time. Okay, and certain topics over here like dynamic programming and graphs, this might take you even 1 to 1.5 months to gain basic understanding and do some classical questions. Okay, every interviewer asks OOPS concepts. No, not necessary. It depends upon your profile. If you are being interviewed at Amazon or Microsoft or even Google for a software developer role, and if you are a fresher or even if you just have very less amount of experience, they will not expect you to know a lot of OOPS. They will just focus on these things that I have written over here. Okay. Okay, I got your concern. I'll talk about that, Mohit. So yeah. So basically I would say when you start the algorithms part, you would first do some searching and sorting. And I would say that if you dedicate your time over here and you solve out all the problems, it would also take you around 3 weeks of time, okay? And then you can learn greedy and divide and conquer in another 2 weeks, which is like more than 1 month, and then 1 month for this. So I would say that approximately 2.5 months for this, and approximately 2.5 months for data structures as well, okay? And you can combine this entire thing into something like, you know, half month or around 1 month. So this is how you can target your learning track, okay, where you start right from basics and then you venture into data structures and algorithms. Is it necessary to learn Python in today's world despite learning languages like C or C++? No, it is not necessary. For cracking interviews, it is not necessary. But once you land into an industry that writes its entire code in Python, you will have to learn it, and you will learn it, okay? Cool. So now I'll ask you one simple question. We have all seen what kind of data structures and algorithms are essential. First of all, is this clear to everyone? Like these data structures and algorithms which should be learned and why they are important and things like those. Okay, now just tell me one thing. Why is it a company's philosophy to, you know, to ask these questions only? Like, why does a company want to hire a problem solver? Why doesn't it want to hire a guy who is great at using a tool which is being used in the company, or great at using some web development framework which is used in the company? They want mental ability, easy to learn tool, reduces time. All of these answers are correct. So guys, the thing is smart people, correct? So company's basic philosophy is that if they hire a good problem solver, then that good problem solver can eventually become great at using any technology, whatever that might be. But it is not vice versa. It is not necessary that somebody who is great at some particular web development framework would learn problem solving skills along with his job in maybe 2 months of time or 3 months of time. Because, you know, every topic has got its own learning curve. DS Algo has got the highest learning curve. Okay, it takes you time to become expert at that. So this is very much essential that you first master these things, and if a company sees you are good with these, then they welcome you open-heartedly. Okay, yeah, so apart from these, you should be good at, once you are done with these, then you can shift your focus to CS fundamentals, and CS fundamental includes operating systems, DBMS, and computer networks. Now, why a certain portion of your interviews are dedicated to these topics is because at times it happens that there are companies whose works are tightly linked to these things, these computer science fundamentals. So let me try to give you an example. Have you heard of something like VMware? Have you heard of this company? All of you might have heard of it, I guess. So what does it work upon? Anyone who has any idea? What is that problem that it tries to solve? Like Amazon tries to solve the problem of online shopping and AWS kind of stuff. Yeah, virtual machines, great. So virtualization is something, or virtual OS is something that it works upon. So if, let's say, you are being interviewed by VMware, then you can definitely expect that in your interview certain questions of operating systems will get asked. They might ask you about synchronization, they might ask you difference between threads and processes and things like those, okay? So that is what might be very much expected. Yeah, similarly for DBMS, have you heard which resources to use specifically for these months for DS Algo? See, there are plenty of resources out there. We'll name you some of those. Like one that I can quickly name is LeetCode is a great platform to go and practice problems. I personally recommend that a lot to everyone. Yeah, so I believe all of you might have heard of Oracle also. So Oracle, it's a company, big company, right? And so there are Oracle databases, right? So if you're being interviewed over there, you might expect that somebody will ask you that, hey, what are primary keys? What are normalizations? How normalizations are used and things like those, okay? And then let's say if you are being interviewed for a company like Cisco, or a company like, you know, Arista Networks, whose work is in networking domain, they will for sure ask you computer networking stuffs. So that being the reason, companies will tend to ask you these things. And out of these three, the most important is these two. Please do not go to give your interviews unless you are clear with the fundamentals of these two. These two are very, very essential, because Amazon would rarely ask you computer networking based questions, but would definitely ask you something based on OS or DBMS. And same is the case with Facebook also and Google also, because databases are used everywhere. Okay. Okay, so if you are asking about learning resources, I would say that there are a lot of resources out there, but few resources that I can recommend you is there is something called as Yellow Pages. So you can try that out. You can see that out, and so that is like short notes kind of thing where the most essential things are only talked about. Okay, cool. So these are the CS fundamentals that one must know to excel in interviews. Yeah, so having said this, only three more things remain that I would want to talk about more, and those things are low level system design, high level system design, and certain puzzles. So puzzles are not being asked by tech companies a lot. So like generally you will not have Amazon asking you puzzles, but certain fintech companies which are into financial domains, they might ask you puzzles. And let me tell you, these puzzles are not new puzzles. 99% of time these puzzles are something which are taken from net itself. Okay, so ensure that before going into interviews you spend some time with the popularly known puzzles as well. Okay, now talking about these things which are low level design or high level design. Low level design is entirely about how to structure your code in the right way. This is more about object oriented principles. So you might be asked, we'll send you a link, okay, don't worry. So you might be asked that this is the piece of code which is already written, can you make this code look more beautiful, maybe by breaking it down into smaller functions and things like those. So that is what low level design is. High level design is generally not asked from a fresher or from someone who is not so experienced in industry, but things that can be expected are questions like these, that hey, you design me a YouTube of your own. Now there the challenges are different. That is tricky for a new guy who has never done a big project, because in high level design you will have to think about the scale of the system. Because if you talk about the main problem of YouTube, can you think of the main problem of YouTube? What would be the most complex challenge that YouTube might be handling according to you? Your answers would be different, but scalability, algorithm, data handling, size of video, users volume, traffic, these things. So I would say that just on YouTube you can upload your video and you can stream your video. So there will be lots of millions of people who upload lots of videos on a daily basis and stream lot of videos. So there are going to be millions of requests that they have to serve, and definitely they cannot serve that using one computer. So they need lots of machines to serve all of them, right? So that being the reason, challenge over there is a bit different. Challenge over there is not for you to implement a graphs algorithm or dynamic programming algorithm. It is system based challenge. Okay, so that requires a different kind of knowledge altogether. LLD. So LLD is your ability. LLD is called as low level design. Low level design means that what is the lowest level of a system? The lowest level of a system is the code. So if a code is already written, can you restructure it and make it look more beautiful? An example could be that when we are freshers, we write everything in the same main function. Okay, and when we learn that there can be multiple chunks which can be reused, you learn to break them down into different functions. When you move to something like object-oriented programming, you learn to break them down into different classes. So this is what is called as low-level design. Resource you mentioned about OS and DBMS. This is called as Yellow Pages. Okay, you can check that out on net. Okay, cool. So yeah, that's all. These are all the topics, and I understand this is not less, you need a proper streamlined set of resources to learn these. And once you learn this, then you are there, you will be comfortable enough to face any interview. Web designing, I'll come to web designing, do not worry about that. So first of all, let me ask you one simple question over here, that let's say if a company like maybe Microsoft or Amazon, whatsoever it is, when you go there as a software engineer, then you do not write graph algorithms over there. You do not write dynamic programming algorithms over there. You write simple codes because the requirement of system over there is not something which forces you to write such kind of complex algorithms. Rather, you have to, write an API where you might have to write few if-else statements and your job gets done, or few loops you have to run and then your job gets done. So if these are the requirements, then why is a company very much willing to check a candidate based on these skills? Why does a company want somebody to know these? So think of it in this way. A simple answer that I would want to give would be this, that let's say you are comfortable at running a full marathon, then you can very easily run a half marathon, right? The same thing applies over here. So if somebody can solve complex coding problems, then he can solve, non-complex problems very fast. And speed is something that matters in every business, whatsoever it is. So, and business is related to code, okay, if it is a tech company. So if you are a fast coder, you will do great. So companies would be more inclined to hire people who are fast coders, and somebody who has solved these complex problems already, he can code simple stuffs very fast. Okay, that being the reason companies would always check you based on these skills. Correct. Okay, now I would come to one more part, which you can call as your project. This might be your college project which you did under your prof, or this might also be your company project, your internship project, whatsoever. Okay, so if your project is being evaluated, which it is done if you mention it on your CV, then what are the important things that a company seeks to know from you? So for a fresher, just one project is enough. Let me tell you that, just one project, but you should know in and out of that project. What I mean by that is, I was once just witnessing an interview where somebody had mentioned his project like, I designed so and so web portal, okay? Then the interviewer asked that, okay, you designed, which database did you use? So he said that, yeah, I used this MongoDB. The next question was that, which all tables did you create? Can you tell me which all tables did you create? And can you tell me that which normalization techniques did you use, if at all you normalize those tables, okay? And which kind of database it is? Is it a SQL database or a NoSQL database? And why did you choose it? So the guy did not have answer to it, and he said that that was done by my friend. I simply wrote the APIs. I did not create the database myself. So that is not the kind of response which is expected. So if you are mentioning a project, you should mention it in a way that the questions that can come, you should be able to answer it easily, okay? And again, I would say I have seen people trying their hands on multiple projects, but they do not fully do any of them, or they rarely complete any of them. So just do one project, but that should be something whose in and out is completely known to you, okay? So, for freshers who have not yet done any project, there is a lot of, fancy glimmerings around the market, and in the outside world, you have got to hear something like big data or cloud computing or things like those, okay? I would say that, hey, do not chase those things for now. If you are a beginner, build a simple end-to-end browser-based application. It could be a simple website, because when you do that, then you design a front end. So you can showcase that, hey, I'm a front end designer also. I can design some good and cool and efficient web pages. I designed a database for this, and I wrote some APIs in the middle. So that showcases a lot of skills. So I would highly recommend that if you have not done any project till now and are looking forward to do something, you can pick that up and build that piece by piece, okay? Uh, I'm in 6th semester, but I don't have good project. A simple project. Yeah, so simple project will be absolutely fine. A simple project as simple as some Android application that does something, or an API that takes an input and persists it into database, or fetches something from database and retrieves it, gives it output to the user. That is also perfectly fine, but you should have done that on your own, and you should be able to speak about every nuances of it. And when you speak about project, speak in step-by-step fashion. Like first you speak that, hey, this was what the requirement was, okay, now this is the way we converted these requirements, real world requirements, into tech requirements, which is tech tasks. Then we decided that we will go with this particular stack, which is your MERN stack or Django, whatsoever it is, because of so and so reason. Okay, you should know the reason behind that. You should not say that, hey, I built my project in this technology because I just knew this technology. No, you should say that, hey, we compared some of those and this turned out to be the best. That is the reason we used it. Okay, and then you should be able to talk about everything, that these APIs got built, okay, this was the purpose of this. And you should also be, and if you have performed some kind of testing of your application, you have seen how much time does an API take, 2 milliseconds, 100 milliseconds, whatsoever it is, you should be able to speak about that as well. Okay, so that is the full-fledged knowledge of the end-to-end project that you have done. So does that make sense to everyone? What do I mean by doing a good project, and how should that be conveyed? Okay, cool. So till here, does anyone have any question in any part? If you have any question, then I can answer, and if not, then I can. How much time one should devote to a medium problem? Okay, good. So that is a good question. So I would say that generally in interview, what happens that generally the interviews are of around 45 minutes to 1 hour and not more than that. Okay, this is an important point that I am trying to convey for those of you who are going to have some interviews in next few days or whatsoever. You can listen to it. It will not go beyond 1 hour, and generally an interviewer comes with at least 2 questions for you. Okay, now let's say a question is asked, okay, and you have not been able to think of even the basic solution or a next higher level optimized solution in under 10 to 15 minutes, then you can actually start sharing your thoughts. Generally what happens that in an interview, there are 2 kind of people who start speaking from the moment they hear the question. Without even understanding the question, they start telling, yeah, this will be the solution, that will be the solution. That is very bad, because that wastes your time, that gives a bad impression to interviewer, and that leads you nowhere actually. So what you can do is, whenever asked a question, you can tell your interviewer, okay, give me like 3 to 4 minutes to think on my own, and then once you have thought whether you got a solution or did not get a solution, you should share your thoughts. You should be very, very loud and clear with that this is the direction that I am thinking into. Is this right or is this wrong? And then he might give you hints. With freshers, I have seen that the expectation is mostly that you should be able to code. In most of the interviews, even if you are not able to come up with the approach, but if you grasped the hint and then coded that thing, then also you will be selected. So that is also a very important thing to understand. Okay, you should be a great listener so that you can comprehend the doubt, as you can comprehend the hint that is given to you, and you should be able to convert that into code. Okay, what about a person who has around 2 years of experience? What is the complexity of projects? So see, I would say that even if you have 2 years of experience, it is very much likely that you can be asked some system design questions. Okay, not just system design questions, but you might also be evaluated based on your project that you have done so far. So ensure that whatever project you did in your company, you have full-fledged knowledge of that. You know the requirements, you know why you did it, what tech framework you used, which kind of databases you used, and which tech stack you used, and for what purposes. You should be able to answer those questions. One more thing, if you use any particular technology, okay, let's say there are many Java developers. Do we have some Java developers out here? We might have some people who might have already coded on some projects out on Java already, right? So you might have heard of something called as Spring. Yeah, so generally what happens that people learn Spring See, Spring is just a, technology. The concept behind that is something different. Okay, guys, we'll send you a link to Yellow Pages after this. Do not worry about that. Okay, so I've said that already. Yeah, so you should know the concept behind that. The concept behind that is of dependency injection. So you should know that well. You should learn that well. If you're good with that, then you can, just go ahead and just talk a lot about any technology that you have worked upon. Okay. Is it important to learn web designing? No, it is not important to learn web designing until unless you are not applying for a role that asks for web development guy. If it is asking for a software development guy, nowhere in most of the cases, like in resumes of, in job descriptions of maybe Microsoft or Google, if you see, they do not mention that, hey, we specifically want a guy who is good with Django or who is good with front-end development or something like that. They never say that. If you have done a project on web development, then you should know about that, because you will be asked question based on that. Do we get system design question in interview? Like I read from Lead Code article, they were asked, yeah, you do get. If you are not a fresher, if you have some years of experience, you will be asked. Okay. How important is data structures for data science? See, whether you venture into data science domain, it is very important for you to be good at data structures and algorithms, because until unless you are good with these, all the algorithms that you use in data science will continue to be black boxes for you. If your interviewer asks you that, hey, which algorithm you used, and you said that, hey, let's say I used, I am an ML guy and I used, let's say k-means clustering or something like that, and if he asks you to explain that algorithm, you won't be able to do that, because those inbuilt algorithms would use even advanced data structures, right? I am in support project since last 2 years. Can you scroll up so that I can see his question? Yeah, I am in support project since last 2 years. What could I showcase as my project? So if you have been into support, I would say that really, if you are looking for a switch, you must develop at least one good project if you are targeting software development engineer role. If you have not done that already, I would highly recommend either do that on your own or grab an opportunity at your existing company somehow. Okay, I'm a C++ coder, but in my current internship, the project is based on Java and other advanced tools, which I need to devote extra time, and I didn't get time to practice DSA, how to manage time so as to... okay, so if you are already in some internship and you feel you don't have a lot of time, I would say that set this kind of track for you, write these topics out somewhere, and I have already spoken how much time they might take, and at least ensure that every day you are writing code for at least 3 to 4 new problems. Okay, so to start with, it might so happen that you are able to write just one code, on the next day again one code, but when you are at a level when you are coding 3 to 4 problems on a daily basis, by the end of 3 months you would have done around 250 questions, and that gives you a lot of background with which you can sit in a company's interview and you can answer the question, because most of the time in interviews, any question that is asked is a mapping of previous question. So you reflect back, you go back in past and you see that, hey, I have done some problems similar to this, so I can utilize the same concept over here. That is the reason you should do a lot of questions. Okay. If you have certain experience and you are working in a company, most of the time you don't develop things from scratch but optimize the legacy code, is that enough? Yeah, that is quite enough. That is quite enough. Automating some redundant processes or enhancing some existing algorithm, or even refactoring some dirty code, or even deprecating something to something, like I had once worked upon a project where I had to do nothing but convert some code of C++ into Java. Yeah, that was boring, but that is a project. That is a project on its own, because when you write it in Java, you might end up using different design principles. You might end up declaring some interfaces, and some different things might come up. So even that is okay. Okay. What to do in last 2 weeks? My interview is scheduled. Okay, so so one liner for that would be that you can go ahead and first brush up the most important algorithms. Generally in interviews, at least one question is from trees or linked lists, and at least one question is from dynamic programming or graphs. So if you have not done much of them, at least learn basics of those, like at least learn some important graph algorithms like BFS, DFS, minimum spanning tree, and do some classical dynamic programming questions like longest common subsequence and matrix chain multiplication, things like those, which are very, very classical. Okay, where should I search for offshore or remote jobs? Okay, so there is a website called as Indeed. So I personally have heard a lot good about it. I did not use it, but people have had others can also recommend if some of you have already used that and have had good experience. Could you speak about tomorrow's test? So after me, Anup will come over here and he'll speak about tomorrow's test, that what can you expect over there. I would say that, hey, do not take it as a test that burdens you with a lot of things. Rather, it is a self-assessment kind of thing where you can sit and you can, look at yourself, that how much you know, and if you were to be at a stage where you can solve all the problems, how much time it can take. Okay, and if we really see a lot of participation, a lot of active participation, then we can arrange for some session where we can either directly send you some editorials, or we can even discuss those out over some platform. A lot of questions actually. Sir, will the course contain development of project? So again, like it will be spoken about after me, like about the course that Programming Pathshala offers to its students. We will be speaking. In fact, I will not be speaking. Anup will come and speak it up. Okay. Link will be provided. Do not worry. Is LeetCode Premium worth buying? Not really if you have already not done all the free questions, or 90% or 70% of the free questions. Okay, because even LeetCode free is great. Trust me, it is great. Okay. We have two options, either prepare for top tech companies or GATE. What would your suggestion be? IT tag. I would say that, see, it totally depends. If you are really not that inclined about higher education, then maybe GATE is not a great choice, is what I believe. Now again, it depends. If you really want to do MTech before you want to do job, then that's your personal opinion. But I would say that if you are at a stage where after your BTech you are good with these things and you can grab a good job in some good product based companies, you should go ahead with that, because you learn a lot when you end up going into a good product based company. Okay, because there are challenging stuffs over there. You do not simply sit and work on some bench, rather than you actively contribute. Both get us entry level job, BTech and MTech. Yeah, cool. Okay guys, so cool. I think I have an upcoming interview at Google Cans. So I believe there is already a video that we have wherein we have discussed about Google interview, or like what to expect in Google interview and how to go about that. So maybe you can look at that. We'll share the link to that as well. Okay. Yeah, you will get to watch this over there. Okay guys, cool. So I think I'm done with this much. If you have any other question, you can buzz us on info@programmingpathshala, and I would be happy to answer those questions. So thank you guys. Thank you all. Hope I was able to answer some of the questions, and now Anup will take over.
Hello everyone. So now coming on to the part, basically I feel that everybody, each one of you must have got acquainted with the kind of topics that you have to prepare, how to prepare it, what is important, what is not important, and got your some questions sorted. Now if somebody is there who wants to, who is seeking help, then what do we do and how it can help you guys, I would like to elaborate on it. So one of the things that we do is campus workshops. So we go to colleges, take workshops for 7 days, 10 days, and help their students to get placed in great companies. So if you want to do that with us in your college, you can write to us at info@programmingpathshala.com. So I'm writing the email ID for you to write about any of your queries, if you are facing any issues, if you need some referrals or anything. You can write to us. We can look at your CV, and if we can help you in any way, we'll be happy to do that. Other program that we run is 6 months online learning program, which is called Genesis. Genesis is a assured job program in which people pay later. So Genesis is very different in the sense that it is the most affordable ISA with very good people teaching you. So it is more about learning experience rather than the trap of job that okay you'll get a job. No, it is more about learning. So you can find out more about Genesis at programmingpathshala.com/Genesis. I hope it is visible to you. And I would say if you are in your 3rd year or 4th year, you must apply for the contest. We take just 49 students, and the idea is that each one of them should be individually attended, and the other ISAs basically they charge you a portion of your CTC, which is exorbitantly priced to what is usually taught. And so Genesis is different from many ISAs is that the idea to pay back is to just make it more inclusive. So students who are not able to pay now, when they get placed, they can pay the same amount little later. This is not very exorbitantly priced, and it is very affordable. And third thing is it is very individual centric and personalized. So we have a very small batch of 49 students. There is a batch going on now which is being taken by Vivek and Bharat. So Vivek has worked at Amazon, Bharat has worked at Tau Research Capital. So these guys have been taking it very meticulously.